Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 102 of B-Road Ballers on Gran Turismo 6 for this particular episode, and in this installment we're featuring the oldest incarnation of the Honda Civic to be featured on Gran Turismo, the 1979 Civic 1500. Personally, I think this is a pretty cool looking car. In standard form it's only available in one colour, but once you've purchased it you can repaint it on Gran Turismo 6. And the fact that it is a much older vehicle, a 70s car, albeit a late 70s one, does mean that technically it is a classic. So why are we featuring it here rather than in Days Gone By, the classic review series? Well, to be honest, the primary reason why I chose to feature it in this series instead of that one, although it can very justifiably feature in both, is because when you think of certain vehicles, you think of them under a certain category first, and then maybe other categories after. So for instance, if you think of the Honda Civic from any year, you think hatchback first of all, and then after that you may think hot hatch, classic, whatever else. So for me at least, and maybe some people would disagree, but for me this is a hatchback first, and then a classic second, which is why I chose to feature it here. In a similar way to how something, for instance, like a Triumph Spitfire is a sports car, definitely, but most people would think of it as a classic, first of all, and then as a weekend warrior or a sports car afterward. So with that out of the way, that semantic section, what does this car actually offer? Because there are a ton of Civics on Gran Turismo, there always has been, and they're pretty good, generally speaking. A lot of people are in love with the Civic, for good reason. Some of them are excellent. The Type Rs and the SIRs tend to be the best. This one doesn't necessarily have the same cult following on Gran Turismo as the newer ones do, not too surprisingly. So for those who do want to try something a bit different, for those who are more fans of older hatches, retro hatches, what does this car offer? Well, actually it's got a really good spec, because that 1.5 litre engine can be turbocharged up to a really impressive 266 horsepower and, I would say, an even more impressive 221 pound-feet of torque. Both of those numbers are very strong for this car. That's not under par at all, in fact it's way over it. The weight is also extremely low, and of course that's not at all surprising, because hatchbacks are generally small and lightweight anyway, and so are classic cars, so when you put those two things together, it's got a pretty good chance of being lightweight. This one is. It weighs less than 700 kilos, which is really good, especially when you combine it with that power. Now, the PP level is reasonable. It's perhaps a little bit too high, I would say, but not ridiculously high. It's 518. It certainly would be better at, say, I don't know, 495 maybe. That would be more realistic for this car. 500 at the most, so to be that much higher is a little bit unfortunate, but at the same time it's not unusable at that level. It's a little bit like something like a Ford Focus RS, for instance. Not as quick as that, but similar in that its performance can definitely take on other vehicles at that level, even though it's just a front-wheel drive hatchback with a lot of power. Now, hands down, I would say one of the best things about this car is the value for money, and directly the price, because this costs less than 10,000 credits. Even for a hatchback, that is dirt cheap, especially for a car as capable as this one. Now, I just likened it, of course, to the Focus, but the similarities really are striking. When you fully tune this car and fully tune the Focus RS, and feel the way the cars perform, the way they handle in particular, but also the combination of not necessarily insane power, but certainly high power, respectively, to each car, and unusually low weight, in, of course, their respective sizes, hatchback types and timelines, it's interesting to feel just how similar they are. The handling is very reminiscent to the Focus RS. Of course this came before the Focus, but in Gran Turismo terms the Focus RS is a much better known car in terms of what it's capable of. A lot of people use the car. It is definitely considered to be an OP vehicle, and I would agree with that. It is. It's way better than you'd probably assume it would be. You'd expect it to be good, but you wouldn't expect it to be as good as it is. This one, I would say, is similar. It doesn't have the same level of competitive range that the Focus has, because it's a less powerful car, it's not quite as quick, etc. But in its own little way, especially in the lower PP levels or on tighter circuits or up against older hatches or lighter ones, it's definitely a useful machine. And for that price tag of, again, under 10 grand, this car actually takes some beating when it comes to hot hatches in particular that aren't just older but that have, for instance, less than 300 horsepower, let's say. Because stuff like even the Polo GTI, which is a remarkably good hatchback, that has over 300 horsepower, and when you reduce it, of course, you're going to lose a bit of that performance. This car is running in its peak with well under 300 horsepower, so it's a useful car to bear in mind from that point of view. The handling is fantastic. You can spin up the tyres, of course, with that much torque going through a 1979 front-wheel drive chassis, of course you can, but it's a remarkably good performance car, and I think I may actually like this one more than a lot of the newer Civics. It's a great track car, a great sleeper, and definitely both an undervalued hatchback and classic. So I would definitely recommend checking this one out, and that's it for this pick overall, so I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.